Friends, welcome to E-Pathshala in Linguistics. This is the paper that concerns language universals and language typology. I am K.V. Subbarao, Professor of Linguistics. Today we are going to talk about anaphora, where we will discuss nominal and verbal reflexives, and complex and simplex anaphors, and long-distance anaphora. We are going to discuss the typology of anaphors in South Asian languages. There are three binding principles that were proposed in the government and binding framework. Then non-nominative subjects as antecedents to an anaphor, various functions of the verbal anaphor, and long-distance binding. Anaphora means back reference. When you have to refer to an element in the sentence which refers back, that element which has back reference may be called an anaphor. So the expression anaphor is used to refer to reflexives and reciprocals. Reflexives and reciprocals are arguments, and you also have emphatics in a language that resemble a reflexive, but emphatics are not arguments, they are adverbs. Like for example, John looked at himself in the mirror is a reflexive. Himself occurs in the direct object position. John and Mary met each other. Each other is a reciprocal. Each other occurs in the direct object position. Thus, himself occurs in the direct object position. The reciprocal each other occurs in the direct object position. Whereas, in contrast, the emphatic, John himself went there. Himself is not an argument. It's like an adverb. It performs the function of an adverb. So, though John looked at himself, the himself reflexive, and John himself went there, the himself, which is an emphatic or homophonous, they have different functions and they occur in different types of argument positions. You have nominal expressions which can be classified into three major categories. Number one, reflexives and reciprocals. Number two, you have personal pronouns. Number three, referential expressions. We shall just see what we mean by these three. All nominal expressions in a language can be classified into these three major categories. Let us consider some examples of reflexives from English. You have first person, second person, and third person. You have singular and plural. So myself, for example, is first person singular reflexive. Ourselves is the plural form. Yourself is the second person reflexive in singular. Yourselves is the second person reflexive in plural. In the third person, you have himself, herself, itself, and the plural form will be themselves. Whereas, for emphatic also you have the same forms. I myself went there. We ourselves went there. He himself went there. They themselves went there. Though they are homophonous with the reflexive, as we said a moment ago, they are emphatics, they are not arguments, they behave like adverbs. There are two types of anaphors, that is, like himself, myself, yourself, etc. These are called nominal anaphors. And you have, in addition, in some languages of the South Asian subcontinent and across the world, where you have a verbal form that functions like an anaphor. it could be a reciprocal, it could be a reflexive. The nominal and verbal anaphors are further classified into reflexives and reciprocals. Reflexives we have seen just now, himself, ourselves, etc. Reciprocals are each other or one another. Nominal anaphors may occur in the position of a direct object, an indirect object, or an oblique object. For example, an example of direct object is Mary admires herself. Herself occurs in the direct object position. For the indirect object, the minister awarded the contract to himself. To himself is an indirect object, and the minister is the antecedent, so the anaphor occurs in the indirect object position. Oblique object position, like with or at anaphor, for example, Mary is happy with herself. John got angry at himself. With herself or at herself are oblique objects, and the anaphor occurs in the oblique object position. Some languages have possessive reflexives too, namely the form that occurs as a possessive requires an antecedent to be there, and the form is a possessive reflexive. For example, English doesn't have any. John saw his book, I saw my book. There is no possessive anaphor in English. But a language such as Hindi, Urdu, or Punjabi, or Marathi, or Telugu may have a possessive reflexive. Like Ram ne uski kitab padhi. Uski is a possessive pronoun which modifies kitab. Ram ne uski kitab padhi, that means Ram read someone else's book. Whereas Ram ne apni kitab padhi, Ram read his own book. So these are called, apni is a possessive pronoun. In Hindi, apni occurs in all the three persons, first person, second person, and third person. Both, we will show what the verbal reflexive and verbal reciprocal are, and they are universally monomorphemic. In contrast to a nominal anaphor, which may either be a simplex form or a complex form. For example, in Hindi or in English, myself, ourselves, each other, they are all complex forms. They are all anaphors. Whereas apna, the possessive pronoun, the possessive reflexive is a simplex form. Let's take an example from Hindi. An anaphor, nominal anaphor, occurring in the direct object position. राधा ने अपने आप को शीशे में देखा. Radha saw or looked at herself in the mirror. अपने आप को is an anaphor. It is polymorphemic because apne is one part, आप is the second part. Since it consists of two morphemes, we consider it as a polymorphemic anaphor. And it has the postposition ko that occurs in the direct object position. It is an accusative case marker. Radha ne apne aap ko शीशे में, in the mirror, देखा. Notice that the verb is देखा. देख is the verb to see. देखा is past form of see. So you have Radha ने अपने आप को देखा. Or even if Radha looks at Sita, Radha ने Sita को देखा. That is, the verb remains the same whether you have an anaphor in the direct object position or a pronoun in the direct object position. Let's consider an example from Telugu, a Dravidian language, where you have a nominal anaphor as well as a verbal anaphor. Let me read the sentence for you. Radha tanani tanu pogudukondi. Radha is the subject, tanani tanu is the direct object, pogudu, praise, is the verb, konni is the verbal reflexive, di is the agreement marker. Notice two important points. Tanani tanu is a complex form. So, this is a complex anaphor. Look at the parentheses that are there on tanani tanu, which means tanani tanu, the nominal anaphor, is optional. The nominal anaphor consists of two parts, tanani and tanu. The first part carries the ni, that is the accusative case marker. Tanu is a copy of the subject, and you have that is in the nominative case. Why? Because Radha is in the nominative case. Since Tanu is a copy, Tanu is in the nominative case. The first part of the anaphor is structurally case marked, and it carries the lexical case marker ni. This can be either one can say tanani tanu in Telugu, or simply somebody can say tanani, or someone might like to omit the whole anaphor, the nominal anaphor, and simply use the verbal anaphor pogudukondi. The verbal anaphor kon occurs there because Radha, the subject, is co-indexed with the direct object tanani tanu. That is, a verbal anaphor can occur only when you have the subject co-indexed either with a direct object or an indirect object in Telugu. The case we have on hand is the direct object, the anaphor occurring in the direct object position, Radha tanani tanu pogudukondi. Since kun, the verbal reflexive, is there, the nominal reflexive can be optionally dropped. Let us take an example from Mizo, a Tibeto-Burman language. Mizo is very similar to Telugu or Dravidian languages, except Malayalam, because Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and various other non-literary Dravidian languages have a verbal reflexive. Similarly, Mizo, which belongs to the Kukichin group of languages, has a nominal reflexive as well as a verbal reflexive. Here you see in sentence number 3 on the screen, Zawa hates himself. Zawa amale ama inhuwa. Zawa is the subject. Amale ama is your anaphor, reflexive, that occurs in the direct object position. You can clearly see ama is one part, le is a conjunction, the second ama is another part, so it is a complex anaphor. The entire complex anaphor can be dropped, which we have indicated in parentheses. Why can it be dropped? Can I drop the anaphor in Hindi or Urdu or Bangla or Kashmiri? No. Why? Because Hindi, Urdu or Kashmiri or any other Indo-Aryan language does not have a verbal anaphor. But Dravidian languages and the Kukichin languages are in those languages where the verbal anaphor is there and the occurrence of the verbal anaphor is obligatory. You can drop the nominal anaphor. So, Zawa amale ama ain hua. Zowa hates himself. Now I can simply say Zowa ain hua. Zowa hates himself. That is, the VR, the verbal reflexive, is obligatory, while the nominal reflexive is optional. Another interesting point you can see is, as you will be noticing, that cookie chain languages are split ergative languages. By that we mean the ergative marker that occurs, the agreement markers that occur in the sentence are sensitive to the person of the direct or indirect object in a sentence. Here in this sentence, in Mizo or Mar or Thado or any other cookie chain language, if the verb is transitive, that is, if the verb can take an object, the subject must carry the ergative case marker. Like, for example, in the following sentence, Zowa looked at Zovi. Zovan Mary a mu. Zovan, Zowa is the name of the person, a boy or a man. N is the ergative marker. Mary is the direct object. I is the third person agreement marker. Then mu is the verb to see or to meet. This sentence means Zowa saw Mary or Zowa met Mary. Here, the direct object and the subject are not identical, therefore the ergative case marker occurs. However, in the sentence we have seen above, that is, Zowa amale ama ain hua, that is sentence number 3, though the verb is transitive, the ergative case marker cannot occur with Zowa, because when the verbal reflexive in occurs with the verb, then the subject, the verb is detransitivized. When the verb is detransitivized, you cannot have the ergative case marker. So the moral of the story is, when you have a nominal reflexive or nominal reciprocal in the direct object position, and consequently the verbal reflexive or reciprocal occurs in the verb, in the predicate, then the predicate is detransitivized, that is, it becomes intransitive, in spite of the fact the verb may be transitive in nature. So you cannot have the ergative case marker N with the subject. As we will see later, when the anaphor in cookie chain languages occurs in the indirect object position, the verb and the verbal reflexive or verbal reciprocal occurs with the predicate, the predicate is not detransitivized. We are not going to go into the details. So what we have to notice is that only when the anaphor occurs in the direct object position and when the verbal reflexive occurs with the verb, obligatorily, the verb is detransitivized. Let us look at another language, Khasi, spoken in Meghalaya, which belongs to the Mon-Khmer subgroup of the Austro-Asiatic family, the other subgroup being the Munda subgroup. In Khasi, the verbal reflexive is optional and the nominal reflexive is obligatory. In contrast to Dravidian and the cookie chain languages, where the nominal reflexive may be optional, but the verbal reflexive or reciprocal are obligatory. So let's look at the Khasi example. Sentence number 4. Ulem upait hi dalade yalade Hakait. Lem looked at himself in the mirror. Lem is masculine, therefore it carries the masculine. The noun has to have the masculine singular agreement marker u, and the verb also carries the agreement marker u, upait, that is looked at. The verbal reflexive he is indicated in parentheses, is optional, and the nominal anaphor occurring in the direct object position is dalade, yalade. Dalade, da is an instrumental marker, lade is self, ya accusative case marker, lade is self. And dalade, yalade is a complex anaphor because it consists of two parts. The first part can be dropped, but yalade cannot be dropped. So you have ulem, upaithi, dalade, yalade, hakait. Ha is the locative post position. Kait in the mirror. You have in the mirror. Lem looked at himself in the mirror. You must have noticed that this language carries prepositions. Ha, the locative case marker. Da, the instrumental case marker. Ya, the accusative case marker. They occur to the left of the noun. Why? Because Mon-Khmer languages are verb medial, hence they have post positions. We shall now move on to the Mundell languages, which is another sub-branch of the Austroasiatic family. We have to notice certain points. In the Mundell languages, the verb occurs in the final position, that is, all Mundell languages are verb final, in contrast to the other sub-branch of the Mon-Khmer family, where all the Mon-Khmer languages are verb medial. And Mundell languages, because they are verb final, they have post positions. And in Mundell languages, you have a verbal anaphor, but there is no nominal anaphor as such. That is, it is the verbal anaphor that is indigenous to Mundell languages, and the nominal anaphor is not there except in borrowings, a form, a pen or something of that form, that something of that type, which is a calqued form from the neighboring Indo-Aryan languages. So you have sentence number 5, next slide. In sentence number 5, you see, you saw yourself in the mirror. Adsi rem nel kana in whole language. So adsi is mirror, re is in, m is the subject agreement marker. That's why this is a pro-drop language, heavy pro-drop language, where you don't have to have the subject. Why? The constituent in the pre-verbal position, that is adsi re, carries the agreement marker m of the subject. So adsi rem nel kana. Nel is the verb to see, k is the past tense marker, n is the verbal reflexive, a is the, you can call it a finite marker or a declarative marker. So this n, which functions like a verbal reflexive, is a detransitivizer, and this performs the function of detransitivizing the predicate. So you have adsi rem nel kana. Where is the nominal anaphor? It is missing. As we mentioned just now, there is no nominal anaphor in Mundell languages unless the language has borrowed a calqued nominal anaphor either in the direct object position or in the indirect object position, or in the oblique object position. We will take a case from Santali to show how the verbal anaphor occurs and how the verb changes when the verbal anaphor occurs. In Santali, dal means to hit. The verbal reciprocal is pa. So they dual hit each other. There is no there is no expression for each other because it's a nominal form, and Santali belongs to the Mundell language family. Therefore, it doesn't have a nominal anaphor at all. So you have unkin, kin, zero. The zero indicates a nominal anaphor. Dapal, kana, kana. Point number one. Dal is the verb to hit. The verbal reciprocal occurs as an infix, pa. Dapal, da is a, so the verbal reflexive carries the marker vowel a. Dapal, dapal, that is hit, verbal reciprocal. Ka is the past tense marker, like we have seen earlier. N is the detransitivizer. A is the finite or declarative marker. And notice the unkin kin. What is that kin? These languages have singular, dual and plural. The moment you say unkin, it means they two, they dual. And then the agreement marker has to come in the preverb, on the constituent, which is in the preverbal position. Since there is no direct object in this sentence, the subject agreement marker, kin, comes on the subject itself. It's a very unique situation. So you have the subject unkin, and the subject agreement marker comes on kin itself, because the subject is in the pre-verbal position. And N, the T transitivizer occurs because the moment you have an anaphor in the direct object position, the verb is detransitivized. This N in Mundell languages, especially in Santali, Mundari and Ho, occurs not only as a verbal reflexive or as a verbal reciprocal, it occurs as a detransitivizer. That is, you take a transitive verb and add N to it, the verb becomes intransitive, or it occurs in passives. You know that the passive predicates are all intransitives. Having discussed the typology of the occurrence of the nominal and verbal anaphors, we now move on to the three binding principles proposed in the government and binding theory by Chomsky. What are they? You might all be familiar with these. Principle A, an anaphor is bound in a local domain. That is, an anaphor has its antecedents within the local domain. It cannot have its antecedent in a long distance domain, according to principle A. Principle B, a pronoun is free in its governing category. That is, a pronoun is not bound to have an antecedent within the same clause. As you can see, I saw him. I is not the antecedent to him. Him has a discourse antecedent. Therefore, the pronoun is free to refer to any occurrence outside its sentence. Principle C, an R expression must be free and it should be interpreted as having a disjoint reference from every C commanding phrase in a sentence. What is an R expression? Proper names, common names, table, chair, John, Mary, Ram, Sita, etc. So an R expression is free. Mary came here Ramaya, it doesn't need an antecedent. So far, we have seen sentences where the subject is a nominative subject. That is, the subject is case marked by the nominative case marker, which may be overtly present or which may not be overtly present. A non-nominative subject may be a C-commanding antecedent either to a possessive anaphor or to a nominal anaphor in all South Asian languages. That is, a non-nominative subject either with an accusative postposition or a dative case marker or a locative case marker or an instrumental case marker may function as a C-commanding antecedent, just like the nominative subject. That means, with regard to antecedency, there is no difference between a nominative subject and a non-nominative subject. We are going to show this from examples right now. बच्चों को अपनी बिल्ली दिखाई दी. दिखाई देना is a predicate to be visible that requires the subject to be dative case marked. Ko in Hindi is a dative case marker that occurs with the subject in this sentence number 11. बच्चों को, to the children, अपनी बिल्ली, self's cat, दिखाई दी. The children have caught sight or seen self's cat. That means the children saw their own cat. Now, Billy is nominative case marked. Billy is the theme there. बच्चों को is the experiencer or the persons who are able to see it. It is dative case marked. बच्चों को अपनी बिल्ली दिखाई दी. That means अपनी, self, which is a possessive reflexive or possessive anaphor, has its antecedent a dative subject. That means there is no difference between a dative subject and a nominative subject with regard to being an antecedent. The dative subject, that is, a subject that is case marked by the dative postposition, can be an antecedent to a complex anaphor too. Let us look at the sentence from Telugu. Prasanna pitied himself or herself, where Prasanna could be a boy's name or Prasanna could be a girl's name. So Prasanna ki, where ki is the dative case marker, because the predicate pity oneself, to pity oneself requires a dative case marked subject. So Prasannaki, Tanamida Tanaki, Jali Puttindi. Prasanna, dative, self on, self, dative, pity, born. Prasanna pitied himself. Another interesting part, you can see, Tanamida Tanaki is a complex anaphor. It consists of Tanamida, the first part, self on. The second part is Tanaki. The first part carries the structural case marker, which is the locative, because the predicate pity requires a patient that requires to be locative case marked. The second part of the anaphor Tanaki, as I mentioned earlier, is a copy of the subject. Since the subject is dative case marked, Prasanna ki is the dative case marker, the case copying takes place and you have Tanaki. So Tanamida is structurally case marked. Tanaki, the key is a case copy of the subject. Notice one more thing, there is no verbal anaphor here at all. Why? A dative subject does not permit a verbal anaphor. Why? Because the dative predicate is intransitive. In all the South Asian languages, when you have an intransitive predicate, there is no object. Therefore, the verbal reflexive or verbal reciprocal cannot occur in non-nominative subject construct. Let us take the example of a genitive subject. You know that Bangla, Odia, and Assamese have genitive subjects where you have a corresponding dative subject either in Marathi or Hindi or Telugu or Tamil or Malayalam. So Gopal likes himself. Gopal er nijke bhalo lage. Gopal is the subject, himself is the patient, and since the subject and the direct object are identical, you have the anaphor occurring, nijke, K is the accusative case marker. Gopal er nijke bhalo lage. The bhalo lage, the predicate bhalo lage requires the subject to be genitive case marked. Therefore, you have Gopal er nijke bhalo lage. Just like Hindi, as I mentioned, no Indo-Aryan language carries a verbal anaphor. So, there is no verbal reflexive in Bangla either. Notice also, nijke is a simplex form. You can have a complex form too, nijke nije, but here you have nijke as a simplex form. We shall now discuss the various functions that the verbal reflexive and the reciprocal perform in South Asian languages. The first primary function is as a verbal reflexive and as a verbal reciprocal. We shall look at a sentence from Mar, a Tibeto-Burman language of the Kuki-Chin subgroup. It's spoken in Assam. So you have Lala and Lali help each other. Lala le Lali an insan in tuo. Lala le Lali is a conjoined subject. Lala and Lali. An is the third plural because you have a conjoined subject in plural. In is the verbal reciprocal. San is the verb to help. Again, you have another in and also tuo to indicate the meaning of each other. So you have Lala and Lali help each other. Help is a transitive verb, but the subject Lala le Lali do not carry any ergative case marker because, as I mentioned earlier, like in Mizo, the moment the verbal reflexive occurs, the verb is detransitivized because the direct object, each other, is an anaphor. When you have an anaphor in the direct object position, the verb is detransitivized in Kuki-Chin languages. The verbal reflexive may occur as a detransitivizer. What do we mean by that? You take a transitive verb. A transitive verb takes two arguments, a subject and a direct object. An intransitive verb takes only one argument because it does not have an object, it only has a subject. The door opened. The sentence opened carries an intransitive verb. John opened the door, where open is transitive and the subject is John, door is the direct object. So in sentence number 16, you have Talupu teruchukundi. Teruchu open by itself is transitive, but the moment you have kun, the verbal reflexive detransitivizes the sentence, therefore the sentence has the interpretation, the door opened. In sentence number 17 we see Teruchu is a transitive verb and in is the past tense marker and you don't have the verbal reflexive occurring in sentence 17 because the subject and object are not identical. Mizo too, Mizo and other cookie chain languages also. In Mizo and the other cookie chain languages too, the verbal reciprocal or the verbal reflexive functions as an intransitive marker. It's also called an inquisitive marker, that is a change of state from one state to another. That's the marker that indicates. You have konkai ain hon. Konkai means door. I is the third singular marker in sentence number 28. In is the verbal reflexive or the inquisitive marker. Hon is open. Since the verbal reflexive has detransitivized the verb, there is no question of the ergative marker in occurring with the subject. So you have konka ain hon. However, if you use open as a transitive verb, zovan konkai ahon. Zoa opened the door, where hon is a transitive verb, and since it is a transitive verb, the subject requires in, so in or un, so zovan konkai ahon is a grammatical sentence. Now recall principle A. What does principle A say? An anaphor has to have its antecedent within the same simplex clause, within the governing category. Now there is another phenomenon that we need to consider, which is there is a phenomenon called long distance binding. What do we mean by that? An anaphor in the embedded clause may have an antecedent in the matrix clause, which is a clear violation of principle A. Why? Principle A requires the antecedent and anaphor to be in the same governing category. Whereas, if you have a sentence like in Hindi 23, अशोक ने ललिता से अपने लिए चाय बनाने को कहा. Ashok asked Lalita to make some tea for self. अपने लिए is self, for. So this self for may refer to Ashok, which is the subject of the matrix clause, or Lalita, which is the indirect object, marked by se, Lalita se. So you have, this is a case of pro, control structure. It's a control structure. You have a big pro there. So Ashok ने ललिता से big pro अपने लिए चाय बनाने को कहा. Here pro in S2 is co-indexed with अपने लिए, or अपने लिए is co-indexed with pro. Therefore अपने लिए has the antecedent within the same clause in S2. But in Hindi, अपने लिए may also have an antecedent in the matrix clause, that is Ashok, in which case Ashok becomes the long distance antecedent. So this sentence has the interpretation: Ashok asked Lalita to make some tea for himself, for him, or for herself. So we have to find a mechanism to be able to explain the case of long distance binding. So this can be done when you have long distance binding. The anaphor moves to the matrix clause by the rule of head-to-head movement, which we are not going to discuss here. Another interesting point is only monomorphemic anaphors permit long distance binding universally, and polymorphemic anaphors do not permit long distance binding at all, except in Marathi, and in Marathi, an Indo-Aryan language spoken in Maharashtra, and Kokborok, a Tibeto-Burman language spoken in Tripura. These are the two exceptions. Otherwise, only monomorphemic anaphors permit long-distance binding. Number 2, all long-distance anaphors are subject-oriented. If you have a long-distance binding, the anaphor in the embedded clause can have an antecedent in the matrix clause if and only if it's a subject. It cannot have an antecedent which is an object that occurs in the matrix clause. An anaphor may have an antecedent beyond its own governing category, and that is, it is co-indexed with an antecedent in a higher clause. That is the definition of long distance binding. Long distance binding not permitted when the verbal anaphor occurs in S2. Let's take the sentence. Pari asked Lali not to kill herself. The embedded sentence is, let me read the whole sentence. Parin Lali ama in tatlo ding in ati. So you have Pari asked Lali not to kill herself. So you have pro that refers to, that is co-indexed with the indirect object of the matrix clause, Lali. So Parin Lali pro ama in tatlo ding inati. So you have the verbal reflexive. Therefore, this ama cannot have pari as its long distance antecedent because the verbal reflexive blocks long distance binding. This is true of Dravidian languages. This is true of all Tibeto-Burman languages. The simple rule is long distance binding is blocked when the verbal anaphor occurs in the embedded clause. A reciprocal which does not permit long distance binding when it is polymorphemic. Look at the sentence. All the teachers asked their children not to fight amongst themselves. सारे टीचर्स ने बच्चों को और बच्चों से एक दूसरे से ना लड़ने को कहा. You have एक दूसरे से is a polymorphemic anaphor. It is a reciprocal. Therefore, unlike the sentence where Ashok asked Lalita to make teas for him or for herself, you can have the anaphor apne liye, referring either to Ashok or to Lalita. Here, ek dusre se is a complex anaphor in sentence number 25. Therefore, it cannot have the subject of the matrix clause as its antecedent. It can have only one interpretation. All the teachers asked the children not to fight amongst themselves. So, in this module, we have discussed the nature of nominal anaphors, verbal anaphors, what is the typology of nominal and verbal anaphors, what is the nature of the verbal anaphor, how it functions as an intransitive marker, and what is the status of the verbal reflexive in Indo-Aryan languages, what is the status of the verbal reflexive in Dravidian languages, and what is the obligatoriness or optionality of the verbal reflexive in Mon-Khmer languages, and what is the nature of the verbal reflexive and the polymorphemic anaphor in blocking long distance binding. Thank you.